Greetings! In today's video, I'll be taking a look at this set of pastel alcohol markers from OHUHU. I hope I said that right. I had never said that out loud and it's kind of weird to say. Okay, so what I have here is a set of 48 markers plus a colorless blender. They come in this really nice little bag with 2 blank charts, a small booklet, and a page saver. A page saver, if you are not familiar with this, is a very handy insert that you can put behind the page you're using the marker on. So if it's in a sketchbook or if it's on a surface that you do not want to stain, the page saver will protect that surface or the next page in your sketchbook. This selection is what they call pastel colors, so basically lighter colors. The main thing that was of interest to me though is that this is the first time I see an assortment of alcohol marker that have a fine and a brush nib. No chisel nib. You know the chisel one that's sort of flat and angled? I never use it. I really like using the brush nibs and also the fine nibs, but the chisel nib, I find it really difficult to use. It's kind of streaky and clumsy a bit. So yeah, in the bag, like I said, we have all the markers and the little extras, and it's a really nice small bag. I feel like when you look at it, you don't really expect it to have so many colors in it. The bag has a handle on the top, which I also quite appreciate. It's nice to have something to hold the bag from when your hands are full. I took out other supplies I had from OHUHU, and these are supplies that I had already. The first item here is a spiral-bound paper pad. It doesn't say on the pad, but I'm fairly sure that it was meant to be used with markers. The one I have came with one of those page savers I was mentioning. It fits the full page. So it's really handy to have in the sketchbook because you can store it in the sketchbook, and when you take it out to use markers on it, well, you just have to be mindful and place the page saver under the page you're using. This paper is really super duper smooth. It's really, really nice and smooth. It also has a really pleasant thickness. It doesn't feel too flimsy, so overall, I really like this paper, but I have never quite had the chance to use it before. The second supply that I already had that I will be using here is a set of black fine liners that has many sizes in it. These are supposed to be marker proof, so all in all, I think all these supplies will collaborate together and they're all from the same brand. We're keeping it consistent here. If we go back to the set of markers, I took a longer look at the booklet, and it's really quite interesting because it has info on the markers, but it also has info on how to use the markers and a couple of tips in there, which can be a really nice way to break the ice if you are very unfamiliar with alcohol markers. You can read this and feel a bit more in control of what you'll be trying to do after. Also, the 2 swatch cards that they included for the markers, I really liked them. The paper worked well with the markers. It's not the same kind of paper that what I have in my paper pad. For each color on the chart, I did 3 passes. So I filled the whole rectangle once, then I went back over it for 2/3 of the square, and then back over that for 1/3. So you have 1/3 of the rectangle that has 3 layers, 1/3 that has 2 layers, and the last third that has just 1 layer. And since I did it while the ink was still not completely dry, it really blended super well together. I think this is a nice range of color. The markers go from what I would say is light to medium value in terms of the strength of the color. You don't have really, really dark or deep colors in here, but then again, the whole point of the set is to be pastel colors, so that makes sense. Some of the colors seem to have a hint of neon in the mix. That's pretty interesting. Overall, and generally regardless of the brand, alcohol markers use dyes, and as such, they are not light fast. So the fact that we have some neon colors here and that neon dyes are not light fast really doesn't change much for the outcome of these colors. A thing that I noticed though is that the color of the marker's cap and the swatch, they don't necessarily match. I don't think this is unique to the set, but it's something worth paying attention to, and that really makes the little swatch cards super useful and relevant. really worth taking the time to fill these so that then you can use those cards to pick your colors. I'll be showing a few colors that don't quite match with their cap, but it's still just a minor thing. All the markers are labeled on the cap. You have the name of the color and the number of the color, so that's an easy way to associate the swatch with the marker. The font on the cap is perhaps a bit small, but the number is larger and it's really easy to reference. I think I mentioned the fact that it had two tips that I had never seen together before, and I want to talk a bit more about this here. I really enjoyed this combo of nibs. So most of the work that I will do will be with the brush. To me, that's the most convenient shape because you can go from fine to larger really quickly. The fine tip I really like using for line work, details, and also since it's a finer tip as opposed to the brush. The brush comes to a point, but it's still a bigger nib overall than the fine tip. So what happens is if I use the fine tip, I find that it drops less ink all at once on the paper. So if a paper has the tendency to absorb the ink fast, I find that using the fine nib or the fine tip is really useful for that, to do small details without having them bleed outside of their line. I ended up doing 2 demos for these markers. For the first one, I did a kind of inventory spread of what I have in my bag. It's my bag/purse kind of, because I don't go to school anymore, so I don't really have a school bag at this point, but this is sort of my everyday carry bag. I sketched out my drawing and then inked with one of the finest fine liners that's in the set. Then I did the marker layer on top of that, and in the end I came back with a slightly larger fine liner to do more work on the line work. That really worked well for me. I didn't encounter any issues with the marker affecting the line work, like no bleed, no weird smudging. When I was done with that, I used the page after to do a couple of quick tests and see how layering and blending the marker works out. And then I wanted to do a second drawing featuring the markers, so this is what you see. It's a little fall scene, like some of the good things about fall, which are sweaters, hot drinks, the leaves changing colors, and pumpkins. For inking this one, I sketched it first and I inked with the fine liner that is sort of more like a brush. It's like a felt brush. And that worked well, but when it came time to add some marker on top of it, there's a couple of places that smudged a bit, and I'm not entirely sure what or why. I thought I had left the drawing to dry for long enough, but maybe I didn't. It's pretty minor and doesn't really show unless you know where it is and know what you're looking for, but it's the only thing that was a bit surprising about this one. I love how the markers layered and blended on this one. I find it sort of easier to blend and to create gradients if you use the same marker for the effect, like I did with the swatches where I did 3 layers, but in a gradient, and it really blended well. I also was able to create a nice gradient using a different color that was quite close to the original color, so that was a fun bit. This drawing kind of ties in with something that I will mention, and you'll be able to find more information in the description, but OHUHU is hosting a Halloween giveaway, which is really quite cool. So if you want to have a chance at winning free supplies, check out the info in the description and the links. Overall, I really loved using these markers. I like the lighter palette. I feel like if you don't really know how to pick colors that go well together, you can't really go wrong with this set since all the colors kind of go well together. Of course, it's a particular aesthetic since all the colors are quite light, but it was a lot of fun to use. I'm really fond of this arrangement of nibs. Having the brush nib and the fine nib on the same pen is really ideal for me. I never use the chisel nibs, so. And this is a really nice set. It's affordable, and I love all the little extras that come with it. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much to OHUHU for sending me these markers, and thank you for watching this video. Take care. Bye bye.